Say the Semantics, episode 350. It is Saturday, October 25th, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Saturday evening, or rather afternoon. Just wanted to hop on, talk some more hoop, but also wanted to talk about some other stuff as well. It's been a pretty hectic opening week, as I talked about on Thursday, just trying to catch up with all the things going on. The FBI investigation, just talk about the actual games themselves. And then just talk some more things that have sort of caught my attention, games that I've sort of been interested in checking out, and some other stuff. It's right now I'm taking in the post-rain kind of air, the petrichor once again. My favorite scent, my favorite kind of flavor, if you know what I mean. Anyways, just wanted to hop on, talk a bit, also talk some games, talk some video games, which I haven't in a while. So yeah, let's start off with that. So this past week, the Kirby Air Riders had another direct with Masahiro Sakurai. I didn't watch it because it's long, it's an hour long. But based on what I read, there's like a whole additional kind of like story mode / sort of adventure mode, similar to kind of what he's done with the Smash games, but most primarily the Subspace Emissary in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. So that's really exciting because Brawl, although I never completed that full kind of campaign, I do remember having a lot of fun with it. Me and my friend, we got pretty far into it before we sort of we just never got back around to finishing it. But it's really I'm really excited, and apparently there's maybe a bit of this like rogue like kind of element to it, which is exciting as well. I don't know for sure what that's going to look like. I also need to take a look at the actual direct itself. I haven't watched it yet, but just based on what I read, it sounds like it's just kind of continuing to expand on what the original game had, adding some more content, adding some more flavor. And they've already talked about, or he's rather already talked about, what the city trial is going to look like with more players, online play, all those kinds of stuff. So that has me all really excited. So I feel like I'm definitely going to be picking this one up at launch or near launch. But I'm really excited for it. I think this will most likely be kind of like my winter game. I'm still kind of working through Trails in the Sky. I haven't had the chance to get back into it yet because I'm still playing Ball Pit. That's sort of been like the game that's taken up a good chunk of my time. I've been really enjoying that. I think I'll get into it a little bit more, but I think just based on kind of what I'm craving in terms of like gaming right now is something a bit more on like the lighter side. Again, kind of like my roguelike games, my multiplayer kind of, one like half an hour gameplay sessions or whatever. Those are kinds of the things that I'm sort of wanting at this point, at this current juncture. But yeah, I think once I sort of get through Ball Pit to the extent that I have, because I feel like I'm pretty I think I'm pretty close to like what would be considered completing the game, which is like essentially kind of building out to the final level of the game. Of course there's like additional stuff like completing all of the challenges and completing like the harder modes of each level, but I think outside of that I feel like I've done a good amount of stuff in that game, and it's been really fun to just continue to kind of experiment with all of the different characters. You can also play with like two characters at the same time, and that's fun for just like different types of gameplay modes. So it's been really great. I think, I think it's easy to look at this, and there is like a sort of like a finite amount of gameplay here. Like, of course you can like continue to just sort of expand and continue to just get better at the game. But I think a strength actually is the fact that there is a almost end to this game. It's not like, it's not like a Balatro or like a Slay the Spire where you're just, you're just kind of continuing to go through and, challenge yourself. I think there is an ending almost to this game, which I think is, it's cool. I think that you could probably put this in line with like a Hades or like a Rogue Legacy. Rogue Legacy, you can kind of complete the game in a sense, and then just sort of continue to play the game in New Game Plus. And maybe that's sort of going to be in line with that, with Ball Pit. But I think it's cool. I think it's like a cool, I think it's cool that there's like if you beat the game, you beat the game. Like, not every game has to have a endless mode necessarily, and I'm totally fine with that. Really, just been really enjoying it. It's nothing complex. Like, the gameplay is pretty simple. There's like different types of modes. There's like one of the characters you unlock has you do like a turn-based mode, which is really funny. It's not exactly the most effective, but it's like a fun little wrinkle that you can kind of throw in there. And I think I only have like a few more characters I can unlock, so I'm like curious to see like what the rest of those modes look like. But it's really it's been really fun. This is probably going to be up there as one of my favorite games that I've played this year. And I think, I'm of the mind where, of course, I do love having the option of having a reason to keep continuing going back to a game, but sometimes it's fine that like once you beat something, that's what, it is what it is, and maybe you just want to restart and start all over again and just try to kind of work your way up again. But I think it's okay that there's like a ending to this. I mean, there might be like additional content based on, who knows, like there might be additional content in the future, but for now I'm happy with it. I think I feel like I'll probably, if I really wanted to, I could probably beat, like, quote unquote beat the game by I'm not sure, pretty quickly, if I put in like a couple hours or something like that. But I like the idea of just continuing to experiment with different characters and complete each stage with the characters, because that adds like just more challenge, even though it does technically get easier, but more ways for you to experiment with the game. And so that's been a blast. But I think once I beat this, then I'll probably get back into Trails. I think it was kind of like a nice needed break from after beating The Witcher 3 and Blood and Wine and everything, to take a little break from like a story focused game. I mean, I've talked about that for like the last few years, of how I like to kind of divvy up my time in between something that's a lot more, story focused and more campaign focused, if you want to call it that, with something a little bit smaller. And so I thought this game came out like right around the time that I wanted it to. I did have my eye on it, as I talked about, when this game was announced back at the indie showcase, during the summer. But I think I'm glad that I picked it up, because it's been really fun, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my time playing this. But I'm thinking, so Kirby Air Riders is going to be coming out in like late November or so. So I think when I do have the time to play it, I'm going to be going on a trip to Japan in early December. So maybe on the plane ride over, I'll play it. That might make up a good chunk of that time for the flight. But yeah, I'm really excited to try to play that. I mean, I haven't played the original Kirby Air Ride since I was a kid. And yeah, I am curious to see like how well, that gameplay has sort of aged, because I think when you're a kid, like certain things kind of work, you're not really thinking about gameplay mechanics or anything like that. It's like if it's fun just running around in City Trial and just breaking boxes and picking up different items and stuff, that's all that matters. There's not really I'm not you're not thinking deeply about those kinds of things, right? Now as I've gotten older, I'm a lot more cognizant of different things. I'm a lot more cognizant of quality of life things. As I talked about with Ball Pit, I think the fact that you can like speed up the gameplay, the fact that you can turn off flashes and different, visual effects if you are affected by that. Like myself, I'm a little sensitive to those things, or turn off rumble. All of those things kind of are a plus, right? Those things are an additive effect, which I appreciate in kind of the modern gaming landscape. So when I'm younger, I think, or when I was younger, I was less affected by those things, right? And so the things that people or reviewers talked about in the past regarding the original Kirby Air Ride, where they mentioned things that in terms of content there wasn't a lot of things to do. In terms of the races, there wasn't a lot, but I still enjoyed my time plenty with the City Trial, because there's just something about the gameplay mechanic, something about just the time restriction and the fact that you have to kind of do certain things within a certain time limit. The fact that you kind of have to start over every time. That sort of tickled a part of my brain that I really enjoyed. And I think that has sort of carried over into the types of games that I've enjoyed. I talked about this a little while back when I discussed why I have enjoyed kind of roguelikes so much, is because there's a certain gameplay loop that really works with my brain for some reason. And I think a lot of that is attributed to the things that I enjoyed with something like Kirby Air Ride. The way in which that particular, especially how City Trial operates, is, you're allotted a certain amount of time to complete certain tasks, try to get the best air ride machine to compete, and then see how things go. And if it doesn't work out, you can always try again. I think there's sort of that gameplay loop that really sticks with you. Like the fact that it's not a huge commitment of sorts, I think kind of works for some reason, right? And it's not lost. I don't know. I don't look at it as lost progress or anything like that. I just kind of look at it as, oh, it's a challenge. What, this thing didn't work out this time around. Let's try something else this time. And this excuse me, this particular challenge wasn't the best suited for my particular air ride machine this time around. Let's try something a little different, So I think that the sort of the try again methodology is kind of what has stuck around for me, and has sort of stuck around when it comes to my gaming tastes and what I just have had fun with, And I think the fact that, one, there's just a whole new Kirby Air Riders game coming out, but on top of that, there is kind of this additional, almost roguelike gameplay part of it, gameplay mode, I think is really exciting, and I am really interested to see how that works out. I'll actually probably check out the direct a little later, just to kind of get a sense of it. But I'm really excited to get into this. I'm really excited to see what they got cooking up with Air Riders. Let's talk about some basketball. I'll keep it a little brief because this weekend, at least for like the last couple of days, I didn't watch a ton of games, but mostly just caught up on some stuff. It's already been like 2 days ago, but the Warriors game against Denver was really impressive. They lost last night in kind of a scheduled loss to the Blazers. I really wasn't too worried about that. A back-to-back on the road this early in the season feels kind of ridiculous, especially going from San Francisco to Portland. I mean, I don't know why. That just feels like such a... I think in terms of the NBA schedule, I understand it's hard because it's hard to just schedule things in general, but road back-to-backs have got to go. Like, I just don't think it's conducive to good quality basketball, especially for the players, you know? It's just not good. I just don't... I'm not a fan of that. One of the teams have a clear kind of advantage. I know that I know there's commentary about how oftentimes that's a trap game for, say, the home team. But I just don't think it's good. I just don't think it's great. It's just not good for the game, really. I don't know, but maybe I'm just a little complaining about that kind of thing. Anyways, the Warriors win against Denver was really impressive. Steph just putting on a show again, as always. It's one of those things where when you watch one of those types of Steph Curry performances, that I have to kind of continue to remind myself that this is special for a reason. This is not something that we're going to see right again for quite some time. I'm sure there's going to be players that will try to replicate that style, as many have tried to, but he's his own player. He's his own kind of legacy, and I think he singularly holds that. And whenever you watch him just go off like this, it's incredible to watch, and it reminds you just how special, both how he can be as a player, but also how the game can be so exciting to watch. When the Warriors offense and when things are working in tandem and you're just watching him go off ball and do his loop around, he catches the ball and shoots, there's almost this kind of palpable excitement that you get when he makes that motion. I think even casual fans know when that happens. Like, when he gets the ball in his hand, it's almost this kind of expectation of what's going to happen next. We know what's going to happen next, but there is still just this excitement level to it that I don't think has been found yet, in terms of how exciting the game of basketball can be. I think really the next step in this sort of progression is going to be Wembanyama in terms of the must-watch basketball. Right now it's Steph, Wembanyama, where you can kind of convince viewers outside of NBA fans to kind of buy into this, pointing at it and saying, look at this. You've never seen anything even close to this before, right? And as I think basketball fans, including myself, can look at a Jokic and look at a Jokic and appreciate what he can do. But in terms, I think in terms of play, his passes and those kinds of things can be exciting to watch. But in terms of seeing something and just being able to, I don't know, it's just a show, right? It's a show when Steph is on the court. It was an absolute show when Wemby was on the court in Game 1 against the Mavericks. And those are the things that draw in everybody, not just fans, right? Not just hardcore NBA fans. I think there's just this gravity that someone like Steph has to his game that I think is going to be hard to find outside of players such as Wemby, right? I think that's why when it comes to these types of performances, even last night when they lost, he scored 35 effortlessly. And those are things that I have to kind of remind myself not to take for granted, because I mean, the fact that he's still able to perform like this, close to 38, is incredible. And you just have to appreciate that. Especially just as a fan of the sport in general. I think it's incredible. I just don't think you're not going to get someone of his player in quite some time. So I just kind of wanted to to put that down. Some other games last night, other than the Warriors Trailblazers game, I watched a little earlier the Bucks and Raptors game, which was kind of funny because, I mean, I don't know why I'm watching. I mean, I don't need to explain myself. I'll watch any type of basketball, but I watched that game close to the end. I think just sort of Giannis, just sort of before you even knew it, he had almost a triple double, a 30-point triple double. And it didn't feel like he had a particularly great game either. He's just that great of a player. If they can be anything at all in the Eastern Conference, I think that would be good for just if Giannis and the Bucks somehow string together a position where they're in maybe the top half of the West Eastern Conference, I think that's a win in my book. If they somehow make a type of run, and again, it's too early in the season. They beat the Washington Wizards, and then they won a close game against the Raptors, who look to be a pretty solid team this year. There's not, it's hard to really make a conclusion at this point, right? But I would love to see Giannis again in competitive games. I really felt it almost felt it was a finality last postseason when the Bucks lost to the Pacers and he was on the court and he was and then he got into that scuffle a little bit with John Halliburton, Tyrese's dad. And I was, I talked about this. I was looking back on his championship run and just sort of the timing of that championship. I'll probably talk about it again in the future because I felt that was really, I don't know, that's going to be, it's going to be a sort of one of those memories that I sort of have because of the timing with COVID and everything. And then also just kind of what that signifies Giannis as one of the great players in the NBA, but just kind of looking back at that and then really thinking about how this might be his last season with the Bucks, and then obviously that not coming to fruition, I think is I think it's interesting, right? And obviously there's been a lot of talk about him going to the Knicks and all that kind of stuff, and I feel that's all kind of water under the bridge at this point. But if they are able to do anything at all this season and Giannis is playing at an MVP level, I think it just is going to make things so much more exciting. I think the fact that there is a potential healthy level of competition in the East with these sort of groups of teams, which I'll get into a little bit more, I think is exciting, right? I know people like to rag on the East. I get it. I've done that as well. But if the Bucks can be anything, and if Giannis continues to play at this level, I think they can do something, and I think they could be kind of exciting at times. I don't think they're going to be championship contenders by any means, but I think just having a competitive team in some way, shape, or form, I think is worthwhile for the league, right? I think I felt similarly the last couple of seasons with Steph on the Warriors, right? The fact that they couldn't even get into the playoffs for some of those years when they were in the play-in, was kind of, well, I think it was 23 when they lost to the Lakers, right? And then 24 when they lost in the play-in. So technically not the worst thing, right? Because they were competitive a few years back. But I think last season in particular was one of those things where, especially 24 and then 25 too, until they made the Jimmy trade, where I thought that the focus should just be to have a competitive team around Steph. And I feel similarly about that with Giannis, right? Obviously, I don't have the same connection, but I do like Giannis. I have considered him as one of my favorite players at a time, and I would like to see him succeed in some ways. Obviously, he's already got a chip, but I think if he's able to put himself in competition and in contention again, I think it just is fun, because it's fun to watch the best players be in the more high stakes kinds of games. So it would be nice to see Giannis get some of that this season. I think that would be exciting. So along kind of with the Bucks, the other teams kind of in that mix, I feel like right now, are the Hawks, the Magic, and the Raptors, and Detroit. I think within kind of that middle group of teams, I really do think it's pretty solidly New York, Cleveland right now. Again, super early. It's been 2 games. Some teams have only even played 1 game. But just based on play, based on competition so far, it feels pretty solidly like those 2 teams are kind of there, and then you have the rest of the Eastern Conference sort of squabble, right? And I think that's going to continue to be interesting to watch how they perform. I mean, last night the Hawks beat the Magic after getting their ass kicked in game 1, right? It was a pretty discouraging performance, as I talked about. But I think the fact that they were kind of able to scrap together a win last night against one of their sort of primary competitions, I think kind of throws a wrench into the mix. I think a lot of people, including myself, have talked about how really liking the Hawks off season, and how they sort of have built around Trae Young. And the very first game was a bit of a head scratch, but I think if they can compete against teams like Orlando in the way that they did, even down a Kristaps Porzingis, I think is encouraging, and I think it sort of bodes well for them. On the Magic side of things, I think that there are still some things that they'll probably need to work through, obviously, right? Adding in a pretty significant piece in Desmond Bane is going to be something where they need to try to adjust, right? So that's not really super shocking. I think they'll still be a really good team. But I think you could absolutely make the argument that a team of Orlando can create some separation with how much top end talent they have, but it is about the fit. I think especially the offensive side of things is going to continue to be a huge piece of concern, because like outside of Desmond Bane and I guess maybe Jalen Suggs, they don't really have reliable shooters on that team. Paolo's not someone who's going to be taking a ton of threes, even though his shot diet has sort of maybe leaned towards that, but the efficiency was severely down last game. Franz Wagner, you just cannot rely on him to become that type of person because of his shooting form. So those types of concerns, especially on the offensive end, I think is going to continue to be something that they need to kind of work through to develop into becoming one of the Eastern conference contenders, right? I just don't know if they're quite there yet at this point. So yeah, just to kind of just wanted to give some thoughts. I think once we get more of a sample size, maybe 5 games in, 10 games, I think you can get like a pretty decent case. Although, last season when the Warriors went on their run, that might have been a bit premature. But I think you can kind of start to evaluate some things, maybe like a couple of weeks into the season. So that's something that I'll definitely take into consideration. More games this weekend. More games coming up today, which I'll try to catch some of. I'm looking forward to talk about all those things. But yeah, that's going to do it for now. I'll catch back up either tomorrow or Monday. All right, recording this on October 28th. It is a Tuesday evening, catching up on some more NBA action. We got some basketball going on already at this moment. Warriors game later tonight, which I will be watching, playing against the Clippers at 8 o'clock. Pretty late start time. And especially for like East Coast people, that's 11. So pretty late start. I don't usually see that. It must be something to do with the Peacock / NBC broadcast, because they are showing the Knicks and who are the Knicks playing? Is it the Knicks Cavs again? No, I don't think so. Knicks and Bucks. So that's going to be like the first game on NBC, which starts at 5, which is interesting. I think maybe, so I believe on Sunday, I think, or maybe like the last couple of NBC broadcasts, like both of those games went into like overtime. So maybe the fact that they weren't able to show it, they're like, let's maybe give it an additional 30 minutes just in case this one also goes into overtime. Is maybe the idea behind that. But anyways, we're just playing the Clippers later tonight. They played Memphis last night, which I thought went really well. Memphis is such a weird team. They're such a weird team. Like, they win pretty handedly against some teams, but then get blown out by like the Heat and then the Warriors. Like, I just don't understand this team at all. There is like no consistency so far. Again, we're only like 3-4 games into the regular season, but still, it's a very, I don't really quite know what the makeup of that team is. I know they have a lot of young guys. I know they still are dealing with a handful of injuries and stuff, so that probably contributes to their weird lack of consistency in play. But getting blown out by the Heat is one thing. Getting blown out by like the Warriors last night was one thing, but getting blown out by the Heat and allowing them to score 140 plus points is another. So I don't know. I think they're a weird team. Like, they'll be kind of in the mix because they have the high end talent with Ja and Jaren Jackson. But I just don't really know what to think of them. It feels like after 2023, when there was the whole Ja gun case, and then you got his injuries on top of that, I think kind of led was a bit telling of a kind of demise of sorts, right? And you could argue that maybe there was a clear ceiling with that team, but they were like a number 2 seed in 22, right? And I think if they had sort of continued with that trajectory and added some additional pieces, maybe maintained some level of health, I think they could have been, they could have continued to be decent. But the last couple of seasons, especially 2024 was when they were completely, I think, actually it might have been 23 when they were completely mauled by and marred by injuries, right? Which is the year they tanked and they got Zach Edey, I think was that season. So, I don't know. I don't quite remember the exact details, but I felt like they were going towards something, and I think maybe just, Morant being a head case plus their injury luck unfortunately probably contributed to them being a bit more of a middling team as where they are right now. But anyways, great win for the Warriors last night. I missed like part of that third quarter flurry when they went up by like 20 and they scored like 40 plus points in the third. I missed like the best part of the game, but from what I remembered, Kuminga's play continues to be pretty impressive. He continues to be steady and have a semblance of like a role. I know it's early, but it really feels like he's maybe finally kind of bought into what they need him to be, which is high octane, high energy level player who can fill in the gaps of the lack of athleticism on this team, which they desperately need, right? Being a relatively, maybe like an average defender against maybe some of the bigger opponents, and just providing rebounding, providing some scoring, just being active on both ends, like really kind of buying into that system type of player, I think is really what this team needs and has contributed to some of these wins earlier on. Even in that loss against Portland, which again I felt was kind of scheduled back-to-back, a road back-to-back of all things, he was still able to kind of give them a bit of a glimpse of, maybe a bit of a chance for them to potentially get back into that game. But I think his contributions, especially in the opening game against the Lakers and then last night against Memphis, proved to be very instrumental in them getting their win. And I think everything he's done just based on just eye test and just watching the game from, pure kind of, big picture view, I think has shown that he can be a winning player. It's just a matter of how much of this can he carry through the rest of the season, right? Because he's shown little flashes here and there. I think the biggest difference, though, is the fact that he has done this over the course of the last 4 games, right? And even when he isn't putting up stellar numbers, I think it was against in game 2 where, he wasn't, it was like 10 plus points or something like that. Even then you could feel his impact. Like the rebounds are significant if it's like an offensive rebound, and the points he's scoring, he's getting to the foul line. Like it's all really good stuff. And if he can maintain that, if he's really truly bought into this, I feel like this really kind of ups this Warriors team's potential. And like he can provide a lot of levity for the older players when they need some additional offensive punch, when maybe Steph is not able to contribute in the way he needs to, or maybe Jimmy is not able to do his thing. Like he's able to kind of supplement that in a really nice way. So I've been really impressed so far. I've been happy with what he's been able to do. I hope that this continues. Again, as I've kind of reiterated this over and over, his success and his contribution to this team is valuable for everyone involved, including himself, in the scenario that he wants to up his trade value, make himself more attractive to other teams. Like there is going to be a potential for him to be a potential trade like asset of sorts, which I think is huge, right? So it's a win for everybody, right? It's a win for the team because it helps them win games, and it's a win for him because it allows him to put himself in a position to go to another team if it doesn't work out, or if the Warriors want to kind of pivot and find someone who sort of maybe quote unquote fits better with their current timeline, right? So it's good. It's good so far. I'm really happy with that. Good to see Pods kind of do a little bit more because he had been kind of struggling in the first few games. So glad to see he was getting some shots up and getting some threes in. Moody had a kind of an explosive third quarter, which is kind of what I missed. He was just making threes left and right, but just based on kind of the replays and stuff, he looked really locked in and impressive. So good contributions from the younger players. That's going to be huge moving forward for this team. And we'll see kind of what tonight's game looks like. I haven't really watched the Clippers play yet. I think I've seen every other team play, but I haven't watched really any of the Clippers games because I don't really care for the Clippers. I don't really like watching them play, but every other team I think I've watched. So this will be, they've been, outside of that Utah loss in opening night, it seems like they've been pretty steady in getting their wins, and it sounds like they're probably going to just be in the mix again, at least within the playoff picture. I don't know how well they're going to do, postseason, because there's always going to be question marks with that team. I just don't, I don't think, I just don't think you can really expect a lot from them in the playoffs. Like, historically, they've proven again and again that they cannot be relied on. But at least during the regular season, they're going to be good. So, I think it's going to be a tougher game. They always cause trouble. Zubac always is a incredibly tough cover for the Warriors in a similar way to like Jokic, just due to his size and everything. But hopefully they can pull it off because they've kind of had our number for the last couple of seasons. Other things, other observations. The Sixers backcourt of Maxey and VJ Edgecombe continue to be impressive. I watched a little bit of their game last night where they played against Orlando, who's kind of continuing to struggle. But Maxey has just been on a tear. He's been averaging, 30 plus points over the last few games. VJ Edgecombe is looking like an early contender for Rookie of the Year. And they're just a fun team to watch, I think, especially with those two kind of leading the charge. Just shifting away a little bit. Embiid has been playing, but obviously he's not the same person. He's not the same player due to his injuries. You can clearly see that there is just a step down in his athleticism and his foot speed and everything. But the show is Maxey and Edgecombe, as it kind of should be, right? Shifting away from kind of that era into this new era with the younger backcourt, I think, is really fun. And the fact that they're winning games is a huge plus as well. I feel like it's looking a lot brighter for Philly now, right? I think last season, the biggest thing was the fact that they retained their draft pick and then they were able to draft VJ Edgecombe. That was kind of they were able to strike luck with that, right? If it fell out of, I think, the top 7, they would not have been able to keep it. It would have gone to the Thunder. So it was looking pretty bleak, right? If it ended up going that way, that would have been kind of a lost cause, unfortunately for them. It was probably them and the Suns who had maybe kind of the bleakest future moving forward. And I think right now you could probably say either the Suns or the Kings probably have not the greatest futures right now. So good for the Sixers. They were able to, they sort of properly tanked last season, right? They also got lucky with their picks, right? Because, Dallas and San Antonio somehow jumped to 1 and 2. We don't need to get back into all of that, but they were able to kind of pivot correctly, and it worked out for them. So good for Philly. let's talk about Orlando. I watched a few of their games, and the same issue plagues them as it has over the last few seasons. Their offense is just horrible. And then, unfortunately, their defense has not been quite great either. They've let up a lot of points to some opponents, which I feel like you shouldn't necessarily. I mean, the Bulls, the Sixers. I mean, I understand the Sixers are now kind of more, again, they're more like a rejuvenated version of themselves. The Hawks are not exactly this high-octane offense. At least they haven't figured that quite out yet. Although, if you do have Trey Young at the helm, that might help out a little bit. They're kind of in a weird spot as well. But yeah, letting up all of these points when you are a defensive-minded team is not a great look. And then on top of that, the offense is not great. I like Paolo. He's an incredible athlete. He's a great player. I think he's going to be one of the best players in the league over the next couple of seasons, but he definitely has some true inefficient moments where he's taking these not great looks. He can make those turnaround jumpers, which are impressive, but I think you would want him, especially someone of his size and everything, to just go at the rim and be more be a lot more aggressive at getting to the free throw line, right? He's a 6'9", 6'10" dude. He's massive. He's an absolute beast, and he can be. He's put up numbers for sure, but in terms of it contributing directly to wins, it's not exactly been the best. I think adding Desmond Bane, there's been still some adjustments there. He had a good think game, but outside of that, it feels like he's been pretty quiet. So maybe that still is kind of an adjustment, but I think a lot of the issues related to the fact that they can't really score all that well and they can't defend could be some signs pointing to questions about coaching, right? If their offensive schemes are not well designed, that's coming back to an issue with coaching, I think, right? So, and I remember one of the plays late in one of the games, I think it was against the Bulls, where I think it was Suggs, Desmond Bane, and Banchero were trying to kind of they were trying to do something at the top of the key. Clock was running. They were just killing clock though when they were when it was they haven't really fully established anything yet. And then Paolo had the ball, and then it was a step back three, which is not his strong suit. And he was trying to kind of play a little bit of hero ball, which again, you could probably point it out being an issue with him. Some bad late decision making for him. But on top of that, you could also kind of put some of that blame, if you want to call it that, on the coaching as well, right? Because what kind of play were you trying to run there, right? Were you just trying to do a Paolo ISO play at the kind of the end of the game? I just don't know. It's he is your star player. Obviously you want to get the ball in his hands, but wouldn't you want to have him try to get closer to the hoop, especially that, considering that's what's one of his strengths? I just, that's one of my least favorite things is a play that involves your star player taking just an incredibly inefficient shot at the end of the game. Even if they can make it, it's just run your it's a tie game. It does not need to be a 3, right? Run some like run some cool plays. You know what I mean? Like, I understand you want to have the ball in your star player's hands, but do some misdirection, right? Like, do some misdirection. Throw a lob. I understand it's not as easy as it sounds, but make it interesting. You know what I mean? Why does it have to be this whole thing where it's like top of the key, let the clock run down, da, 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 da. Like, just do something. It's not, it doesn't matter, really. You know what I mean? Like, as long as you're able to get a shot off and a good shot, and if you can somehow win the game, that's all that matters, right? So I just hate just like holding the ball, step back 3. Like, there's players that can make that, and there's a lot of instances of players making that shot. But when you could do so much better with, like, you just need to make a shot. You don't need to make a 3 specifically, you know what I mean? And I don't know, it's just so frustrating. Like, go for the easier shot. Make it easy on yourselves, you know what I mean? And I think some of that is due to, like, schematics, but also just maybe a lack of understanding or a lack of intention by the player who has the ball in their hands too, right? So I don't know, that's just kind of something I noticed with the Magic so far. They're just kind of in a weird spot where they're trying to figure out, they're trying to like, they should really just hone in on their identity, but they haven't been able to do that. There needs to be, I don't know, if this continues, it's probably not looking great for someone like Jamal Mosley. The Bulls. So I think I've already talked about the Bulls, but the Bulls are undefeated currently. I mean, it's only 3-0, but some pretty fun, impressive wins against their Eastern Conference opponents in the Magic, the Hawks, and who else did they won game 1, I think, against who did they win against? I forgot. But they've been winning against, like, the teams that they should be, which I think, or I guess, like, teams that are sort of in direct competition with, which I think is good, right? I think that's, like, a good thing. But they're fun, you know? Like, I think last night they played against the Hawks, and they had, like, 8 players in double digits, which I think is, like, kind of like an everybody eats type of situation. I like that. I think that's really fun. You know, they don't have, like, it's like, I guess their best player right now is Josh Giddey. I feel like Matas Buzelis is probably going to be, as he continues to sort of mature, I think he'll be the best player on this team, but right now it's Giddey. But they have a lot of young, like, fun young players. Vucevic is doing all right. He's doing all right. He's had a good start to the season. I don't know, like, I think it's kind of like, it's unfortunate, but I think the Bulls are probably going to keep him, you know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, it's working out. It's like when they really should trade him. But whatever, it is what it is. They're just kind of, like, they're a fun team to watch, you know what I mean? And hopefully this means that they can get some semblance of success, especially in this kind of weak Eastern Conference. But yeah, I think they'll definitely continue to be kind of my league pass team, one of my league pass teams, because they've been the most fun. I think they've been, like, outside of my Warriors, I think they've been the most fun team to watch, just because they move the ball around, a lot of just a lot of movement on the offensive end, and that's good basketball. That's, like, what makes basketball really fun to watch, right? Is of course it's fun to watch, like, the star player just go off and stuff, but having this agrarian economy of basketball where everybody gets a touch on the offensive end, I think is a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, they're going to continue to be sort of my league pass team until they get, like, blown out. And then it's like, oh, okay, we sort of thought this is who we thought they were, right? Kind of moment, which I think will happen, but it doesn't mean that they still won't be a fun watch. Other teams that have come to mind, it's been a really weird start to this season because, like, outside of kind of maybe the more obvious teams that are maybe undefeated, with the Thunder and the Spurs kind of taking a leap here, everybody else is sort of like still trying to figure it out. There's not really a clear sense. You really cannot develop like a clear power rankings at this point after 1 week. You know what I mean? I think there's no. I actually think there's less things that you can kind of take away this earlier in the season than there has been at other times for myself. Like, just observing, I'm like, these teams are like clearly they have not figured it out yet, right? I mentioned like Orlando, Atlanta, Toronto, like all of those teams kind of in that are trying to vie for playoff positioning are kind of have like losing records. They still haven't figured things out yet in terms of what their teams are going to look like, and what their identities are going to look like. I think with Atlanta, it's a little bit more clear because they have they have Trae Young at just sort of as the lead. Orlando, maybe they can rediscover their defensive identity. And then in the West, it's just, I mean, I guess you could probably point out teams like the Thunder, the Spurs, Nuggets, and the Warriors as kind of maybe the ones that have already, that are going to be sort of like the playoff contenders. But everybody else, it's kind of a mess, right? The Lakers are sort of trying to hold on right now without Luka or LeBron. I've already talked about Memphis being just a complete just whiplash between winning in prominent fashion to getting blown out. And then you got, Portland, who's kind of, they do have like an identity in terms of being one of the better like defensive teams in the league as so far. So they can probably continue to sort of ride that along, but I don't think anybody's really expecting them to be a strong like playoff contender at this point. There's a lot of question marks. And then the Wolves, they're going to be missing Ant for a good chunk. I think it's like a week or so. So they're probably going to struggle, at least earlier on in this season, as they already kind of are. So that kind of is like they're kind of a bit of a question mark right now. So I think there's just not really a lot that you can kind of take away so far. It's easy to overreact, but there has not been any solidifying evidence of who's going to be outside of maybe the Thunder. I think the Thunder are just kind of like the one team that was like, they'll win even if they have like a crappy game from SGA. But everybody else is kind of like, it's still so early, still way too early to make any conclusions. And it's sort of like, okay, it kind of is sort of a mystery of figuring out who's going to be good, who's going to be bad, right? And I think that's going to be interesting, because these narratives right now that people might be putting out might completely turn on its head as like, because like the Jazz are playing good right now, but I'm like, I don't really believe that. Like Lauri Markkanen playing like scoring 51 points. I just, he's doing his thing, and I think the Jazz know what they're doing. They're not even really playing like Ace Bailey, so like once they trade Markkanen, they're back. They're going to be back in the tank. So, I think it's too early to really make any conclusions. Anyways, what have I been up to outside of that? Just continue to sort of chip away at Ball Pit. It's just fun. It's a really fun game. Don't really have too much more to say to that. Kirby Air Riders I talked about. I did end up watching the direct. I kind of skimmed through it because there was like so much information, and I didn't really, I don't really need to know every single detail. Like, I just need to know kind of the big hitters. And it looks great. It basically just is like a souped up version of the original game, and I love that. They added back the original courses as well. It's gonna feel so like nostalgic playing those old courses. It's gonna, I don't know. I think, and then listening to like the music and everything. I can't wait. I can't wait for that. That's gonna be at the end of November, as I've talked about. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for now. Lots of good stuff. Obviously, basketball. We're in it. We're finally in it. And a lot of interesting storylines. Who knows where things are going? Rookie of the year. It's like, everybody was thinking Cooper Flagg. Right now, it's kind of like VJ Edgecombe. Cedric Coward from the Grizzlies is looking pretty good as well. So there are those things. Who are the good teams? Who are the bad teams? Who knows? We will find that out as we get further along into the season. Anyways, that is going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening as always. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.